welcome. You're listening to Unspun Live, the Herald's politics podcast. I'm Hannah Brown and I'm joined by my fellow colleague, political correspondent Kathleen Nutt. How are you doing, Kathleen?
Very well, thank you very much, Hannah.
Good. And we've got a special, a by-election special on the podcast. We are looking at Hamilton, Stonehouse and Larkhall by-election, which is coming up very, very shortly. Kathleen, how's the mood been over this? How's it shaping up?
It's been an absolutely fascinating contest. So the by-election was called following the very sad untimely death of Christina McKelvey, the SNP minister and SNP MSP for the area. She died in March, just at the age of 57, and the election was called. At the outset, it seemed very much like it was going to be a two-horse race between the SNP and Labour. I think, a year ago, Labour would probably been a sort of shoe-in for the contest, given its success at the general election. But some policies perhaps done by the Labour government with withdrawal of the winter fuel payments and the cuts to disability have made the government, unpopular in some areas.
Definitely shaping up completely different.
It's now shaping up in a very different way. Reform have taken advantage of some of the Labour government's policies, and to capitalise on that, the SNP and Reform are now saying it's a two-horse race between the SNP and Reform rather than an SNP Labour race. So very different dynamic that's happened in the last week or so from what the situation was at the outset of the contest.
Especially when we compare it to something like the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election, which Scottish Labour's Michael Shanks won in October, I think, 2023. That was a huge landmark, historic win for Labour there. Won by quite a landslide in comparison to the SNP. For Labour, it's going to be quite a loss if they lose this, following the success of Michael Shanks and Rutherglen and Hamilton West just down the road.
Yes.
But, you mentioned Reform there, and that is definitely a feeling on the streets that Reform is doing well in this area. In Hamilton Town Centre, just there, we've got a few Vox Pops we're going to play now, and the feeling is they're moving towards Reform and also voter apathy.
Hamilton used to be good. I don't know what's happened there. I don't know what you've done.
What political party would you vote for?
Name?
Like Labour, SNP, Reform? None of them? So you don't want to vote? Yeah.
No, I don't vote. Why would I vote? It's the same it's the same rules. That's why I don't vote. It's my dog.
So how are you voting in the Hamilton by-election?
How am I going to vote?
Yes.
Reform.
And why are you voting Reform?
Oh, it's obvious. The whole thing is if they promise things and nothing happens. And I think Reform speak for the average born British person, whether they're black or white. I'm not being racist, but people who were born here just think there's too many immigrants coming in and far too much being given to people that shouldn't have it. I've always voted Conservative, but it seems that once Boris Johnson joined the Conservatives and became leader, it was just a mess. And it's been a mess ever since, so I just decided, having listened to what Nigel Farage had to say, I thought, yes, and a lot of my friends feel the same.
How are you going to be voting in the Hamilton by-election?
I'm going to do Reform, I think.
And why are you voting Reform?
I've seen a lot of good reviews on the internet about them. I'd never heard of them, so yeah, I think I'll give them a chance.
Why are you not voting for any other kind of political party? Just
I don't really know, to tell you the truth. So, but I've seen Reform and quite a lot of people talking about them, so
get a good feeling.
Yeah.
So how are you voting in the Hamilton by-election?
I'm not voting.
And why have you decided not to vote?
Because I just don't feel like whoever you vote for ain't no good done about anything, basically. The country's falling to bits, and I don't think it really matters who you vote for, because they'll make promises that they don't tend to keep, so I just stay out of it.
Who will you be voting for in the next by-election here?
Reform.
And why are you voting for Reform?
Because I want something done about all the carry on that's going on now. You can't get an appointment with your doctor. You can't get anything done with the council. They're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. There's not one of them know their job. It's all jobs for the boys in there. That's how they can't do their job.
And so it's just a bit of a change from the status quo then, is that?
Well, maybe for the better. I think for the better.
So yeah, we heard from quite a few people there who are either, I guess, not voting or they're going to go for reform. So a bit of a change to the status quo. Kathleen, you've been up in Hamilton speaking to Richard Tice. Tell us a wee bit about that.
Yeah, so Richard Tice, the Deputy Reform Leader, was up in Hamilton Saturday a week past, and he came up just after the English local elections to boost the vote. He was out campaigning in Larkhall, which is very much a unionist area. They feel that they've got a lot of support in Larkhall. They also do feel that they've got momentum in the wider constituency. So much so that he actually was saying that they could actually even win the seat, which is remarkable given the fact they haven't got any MSPs at all at the moment. So there is this possibility, could Reform even get the first MSP in Holyrood? Some people might say that's unrealistic, but he believes that momentum is behind them. The poll did come out a couple of weeks ago suggesting that Reform could actually be the main opposition party in Holyrood, come May next year. So it doesn't seem as fantastical a prospect as it would have seemed a few weeks ago at the start of the by-election campaign.
And like you said, it could be a litmus test for Holyrood 2026. So all eyes are on this by-election. So we're approaching the final, I guess, full week of the campaign. What can we expect? Can we expect party leaders turning up? Kathleen, how's it going to go down?
Yes, well, we do know that Sir Keir Starmer is not going to be visiting. Anna Sarwar said he won't be visiting the by-election. It'll be him that's taking the lead in the campaign along with the candidate. But one of the big news, one of the big developments will be that Nigel Farage is expected to make an appearance just ahead of the vote. We don't know exactly when, but in the days before the vote. And this will be one of his rare visits to Scotland. There's going to be a big security presence, I think, around the Reform UK leader. His visits to Scotland before have been very dramatic. I think he was locked in a pub in Edinburgh at one point because there were independent supporters outside protesting, and he had to be laid out by the police and driven away under heavy security.
And I guess, interesting that you said that, brought up these security concerns. What if Nigel Farage comes up? Reform UK, Ross Lambie, the candidate here, is saying he's definitely going to come up. We've not got any security concerns for Farage, and he says it's fascinating because on the doors, the reception to Reform has been really positive. Now, of course, he's going to say that. He's the candidate. He wants his party to look good here. But yeah, I think Farage may be welcomed by some in this community with open arms. So we've been speaking to a few of the main candidates for the Hamilton by-election who we're just about to hear from. Now, important to note that Scottish Labour leaders Anna Sarwar is speaking to us in place of his candidate, Davy Russell. In the interview, Anna Sarwar does mention that Davy Russell was speaking to us a moment ago, and that was last week because we were in Larkhall. And Davy Russell did give a press interview with a few people in a journalist huddle. So it does seem to be as if they're potentially protecting their candidate. There's a wee bit of, I guess, seen and not heard potentially for Davy Russell. Now, Labour will argue that they want to just focus on chapping on the doors instead of speaking to the media. We know that Davy Russell isn't going to the STV debate that's just happening a couple of days before the by-election. But yeah, there is a feeling that, as we were speaking about with Reform, we're seeing Reform on the rise. We're seeing their candidate here, Ross Lambie, basically jump at the chance to do any sort of media appearances. There could be a concern here that Labour isn't making much of a song and dance about their candidate as they should be.
Yes.
But anyway, let's hear from them and hear what they have to say.
We start this report at Larkhall karting circuit, where Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, is gearing up his candidate for the race. I'm here in Larkhall, where the race for the Hamilton, Stonehouse and Larkhall by-election is well and truly underway. We've been speaking to candidates and political parties about what they have to offer for voters who are heading to the polls very soon. Anna Sarwar, can you explain what Labour are offering in this by-election?
Look, the key issues that we are campaigning on in this by-election is proper investment in Hamilton Town Centre, something voted against by the SNP and by Katie Loudon. Obviously, we are campaigning for the reinstatement of the winter fuel payment here in Scotland, something that is Scottish Labour policy. Third, we want to maintain the neonatal unit in Wishaw, which is obviously of importance to communities here in Lanarkshire. The SNP wanted to downgrade that unit, and that potentially risks families being sent hundreds of miles away in order to get that vital health care. And also in Davy Russell, they have someone that's a local champion that is going to put this community first, and the only candidate that actually lives in this constituency, can vote for himself and is well known in this local community and will be a real champion for it.
So we're also talking to Katie Loudon, Ross Lambie, other candidates here. Davy Russell, your candidate, has been accused of being the invisible man here. I mean, we're speaking to yourself. Is that a problem here?
Well, you were speaking to him just literally 30 minutes ago, Hannah, so I don't think anyone can suggest that he's not speaking to journalists. And actually, he put a really good point to you, which I'm going to repeat, is go chap the doors and ask people if they've heard of Davy Russell, if they've heard of Katie Loudon, or if they've heard of Ross Lambie. And I imagine most of them will say they've heard of Davy Russell. And the other two, they don't live in the constituency. They've been parachuted in. One's a right-wing Tory now pretending to be a man of the people. And the other one, I've heard of her before. She was one that was standing against Michael Shanks in the by-election there.
Is he not appearing in the STV debate?
Well, that's for the campaign and those that deal with the diary of the campaign to answer. I think there's been some other suggested dates, but I don't know the ins and outs of that. But Davy is very much out there speaking to people. He was speaking to journalists just a short period ago, but he's getting on with persuading people in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse that they need a new direction, and ultimately only Davy can beat the SNP. Reform can't win here. It's between Labour and the SNP, and if you want to end the chaos and the division of the SNP, then only Davy Russell can beat them.
So I'm here with Katie Loudon. Katie, can you explain where we are just now?
So we're in Shatlerow Country Park at the moment on an absolutely glorious day. It's beautiful here just now.
And can you explain what you're the SNP candidate for this by-election. What can you offer to voters?
So I'm very proud to be standing for the SNP in this by-election. And this is about electing someone who's going to be a champion for this community and someone who is going to bring real action to this community and for the issues which people are telling us on the doors which they are experiencing. So the SNP is about seeing where something needs to happen and bringing that through to delivery. So on things like the winter fuel payment, on the Scottish Child payment, real action for on the cost of living crisis for people and the issues that are affecting them.
What makes you different from the other candidates standing in this by-election?
I'm here speaking to you for a start, which has been something that has been noticeable during this by-election. I'm making myself available and I'm out speaking to as many people as possibly can. I'm an SNP councillor just now, I have been for 2017, and I'm really proud of my record of action, of putting things in place which are important to people and which can improve their lives, because that's what it's all about. We're hearing from people that they're feeling incredibly let down by Labour, in particular at the moment, both at a national level, at the UK level, and some of the decisions that Starmer's government have taken. And we're also hearing from people about how they're feeling really let down at a local level and some of the decisions that the local Labour administration have taken. Their candidate should be out stating his position on all of these issues, because that's what's mattering to people and that's what's affecting people's lives. I'm more than happy to speak to as many people as I possibly can, through any means I possibly can.
I guess a lot of the campaigning material that the SNP have published around the by-election has been almost pitting you against Labour, but do you not worry about the threat of reform here? For example, we see how well videos that Ross Lambie, the Reform candidate here, is putting up. He's doing really well on social media, getting a lot of engagement.
So, I mean, ideologically, the SNP, my party, could not be more different from Reform. I think what is a worry at the moment is a lot of noise is being made by Reform and by the Reform candidate. We're not seeing an awful lot in policy. And we know why that is, of course, because we all remember Farage's comments, for example, on privatisation of the NHS. The NHS is a very important issue to people just now and they want to talk about it. And I'm able to stand and say my party's taking action on that. We're putting in 100,000 extra GP appointments, 150,000 extra procedures and appointments to bring down waiting lists. That's taking action. We're not seeing that from Reform. We're hearing quite a lot of rhetoric. But frankly, I'm concentrating on my own campaign just now. This is Labour's problem, the rise of Reform at the moment. And they have to face up to that.
Ross Lambie, you are Reform UK's candidate for this by-election. What can you offer voters?
Well, we can offer what the voters are asking for, which is they're crying out for some common sense in politics. And they've got good reason to believe there is none, because they're told things, for example, that shipping in oil and gas from the other side of the world into Scotland is not putting up their bills. But they're not stupid. The people in Scotland know that's putting up the prices of their energy bills. They know things, for example, that someone who's paying £5,000 to people smugglers to be smuggled in to the country rather than £50 on a budget flight, they know those people are probably up to no good, but the politicians on the TV are trying to tell them the opposite. And then the people on the street, they knew what a woman was, they always have done, but for some reason the political elites in Scotland had to spend years of debate and millions of pounds on court cases to arrive at the same, knowledge that the public have on the streets. So that's just three quick examples of where the people of Scotland, they believe they've got more common sense than the political establishment. And they're really fed up with the same old faces in Scottish politics trying to argue that black is white and white is black. So when they look at Reform, they're actually seeing a new entrant into the political scene, and they're finding it refreshing because we're willing to call out all these kind of things. We're very fiscally challenged now as a country, but we're still spending billions of pounds on trying to achieve an extreme level of net zero, which is about £30 billion a year for the next 25 years. We call that out and say, stop that, and let's spend that money on getting our public services, our local services, like here in Hamilton, spend that on our local services here. The town centre needs £8 million spent on it, needs £12 million spent on the roads. So spend that kind of net zero fantasy money on real things that real people need. There are no plans to charge for the NHS whatsoever, despite what the other parties say.
What's your take on policies for the local area?
As a local councillor, I know that Hamilton needs to be fixed, and I voted in favour of the £8 million fund to go towards Hamilton, unlike the SNP who voted against it. So we do need radical intervention in places like Hamilton. One of the problems is, unfortunately, that the civil services across Scotland, and including in Hamilton, they don't really have the guts to do it, to be honest.
We've had definite kind of promise from yourselves that Nigel Farage is coming up. Obviously, last visit in Scotland didn't go so well, kind of locked in a pub, milkshakes thrown at him in other places and around the UK. What's the kind of reaction to Reform been like on the streets here? And I guess, are there any concerns if Nigel does come up around?
Well, on the Nigel aspect of it, I spoke to Nigel last week, maybe 10 days ago, and the first thing he said to me was Grangemouth. And he pulled out his phone and he started running through all his intelligence he had on Grangemouth and how it's approaching almost a point of no return there, and we're about to lose. And that piece of national infrastructure, which is critical to Scotland and to the UK, and he's deeply concerned about that. And Nigel's passionate about Scotland, the northeast of Scotland. He's going to visit, he's going to be coming here. He's definitely going to be in the constituency as part of this campaign, we know that. In terms of security, I don't think he has. He loves meeting the people. In terms of the other point, reception from people on the doors, we're finding it fascinating because the support's coming from all corners. It's not like it's almost like the old divisions in Scottish politics are starting to break down. It's not like you're getting it from one section of the community but never the other. It's actually coming from across the board. So it'll be really interesting at this by-election because it's composed of 3 towns, each which are quite contrasting demographics, and so I think you'll be surprised. I think you'll see a strong level of support from very contrasting parts of the country, which I'm really pleased about, because I think Scotland's been suffering with divisive rhetoric for too long now. I'd rather we break down those barriers and we all operate as a Scottish people within the UK, working strongly together, and reforms sort of offering that.
So my name is Aisha Mir, and I'm standing as a candidate in the by-election for the Scottish Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats will stand up for people on the issues that matter, and the things that we're hearing time and time again across the constituency is people are worried. They're worried about making ends meet. They are worried that they can't see a doctor or an NHS dentist in good time. They're worried about the standard of education that their child is receiving. They're worried about cuts to public service. They're worried about social care. There's so many examples I could give you. And that's what the Liberal Democrats are all about. That's what we will champion. Electing a Liberal Democrat into Parliament will give Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse a strong voice in Parliament to fight for the issues that are impacting people day in, day out across the constituency.
What makes you different from the other candidates that are on offer? We're seeing that it's likely a kind of race between the SNP, Labour and Reform. What makes the Lib Dem stand out?
We are realistic about our expectations, in this by-election. However, we've also seen how fickle politics can be, so I don't know. I think we might have a pleasant surprise on polling day. We've got a solution to the crisis in education. We've got a solution for the crisis in social care. People are telling me about, somebody's autistic son can't get the support they need in the school. Somebody's dad's stuck in hospital because he can't get the care package at home. And these are all things that, as I said, they deeply resonate with me because I've had first-hand experience of all these things and the challenges that come with it. But people are listening, they're fed up of, we've had the SNP in government for almost 2 decades now, and they've failed from everything from healthcare to economy. Labour, I think it's fair to say they've been a colossal disappointment. People are saying that they feel really let down. The Conservatives, they just seem to be in this race with Reform to see who could be the most divisive in Scottish politics. I'm not getting caught up in any of that. I'm listening to what people say. We're talking about the policies that deliver on the issues that matter to them. And I can see that the reception we've had has been really, really excellent. The Liberal Democrats, and we're not just a force for change, we're also a force for good. So we're also being seen very positively as an alternative to Reform. And at the end of the day, it's anyone's game. There's lots of, I don't buy into polls and things like that. Polls come and go. It's polling day is going to be, that's the result that matters. But I'll leave it in the good hands of the constituents. People that live there are canny, they're sensible, they're practical, they know what they need, and they know who can deliver those solutions to them.
So there we have it, a wee bit of a rundown from the main candidates who are fighting for the Hamilton, Stonehouse and Larkhall votes in the by-election that's coming up very shortly. Now, last week our political editor Andrew Learmonth told you there's going to be a big announcement on this week's episode. Well, here it is. Unspun Live is going to the Fringe. I know, exactly. It's exciting stuff, Kathleen. This August, the Herald is bringing the biggest names in Scottish politics to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe for 4 nights of live interviews, analysis, and proper political conversations. And very fittingly, we're going to be having these conversations in the dissection room at Summerhall for the first week from 5:30 p.m. Just dissecting politics with the quite few prominent people. Here's what we've got lined up. On August the 4th, we kick things off with polling guru Professor Sir John Curtis and some special guests. On August the 5th, First Minister John Swinney sits down with the one and only Brian Taylor, who is, of course, a Herald columnist now. On August 6th, it's Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar's turn. And on August 7th, Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes joins us to wrap things up. Now, each event will be hosted by Herald journalists and columnists tackling the big questions about Scotland's future. Expect sharp analysis, lively debate, and plenty of chances for the audience to have their say. If you're in Edinburgh this August, please do come along. If you've not yet made plans to come to Edinburgh in August, please do, because it's well worth it. Summer Hall, 5:30 p.m, August 4th to the 7th. Tickets are on sale now. All you have to do is search Unspun Live at the Fringe, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, sounds really exciting, Hannah. Looking forward to it.